Hello, everybody, and you are very welcome to Successful Perspectives. Successful Perspectives, of course, is when we deep dive into the topic of leadership with a leader from our very selective network, Boardroom by EMIR. On this occasion, for this episode, I am delighted to be joined by Alaa Abusiam, who is the CEO for the Middle East at Egis. Alaa, it is wonderful to have you on Successful Perspectives, and you're very welcome.
Hi, Trevor. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. It's such a pleasure, and I look forward to our conversation.
Okay, I've had the pleasure of getting to know you a little bit over the last couple of years or so. And one thing that strikes me is you're one of the younger guys in our network, but a very, very driven leader. So let's talk about your leadership characteristics. How would you describe the central tenets or the main focus of your leadership philosophy or style, or when you think about leadership?
Well, thanks for the question, Trevor. And it's a difficult question because I consider myself still work in progress. But some of the things that I feel work for me is, as a leader, I feel a big part of my job is to drive the energy in the organization. And when I say the energy, it's the different levels of dynamics that you can introduce to yourself individually, to the team, and to the wider organization. It starts at the higher level by driving people towards a purpose. What problems are we solving for? Why are we here? And the biggest motivator, I believe, is to being useful. So that drives a lot of energy into the team. But in addition, how do we keep that curiosity level at peak? And I believe that organizations that continue to recreate and reinvent themselves is just by allowing that level of curiosity to transmit through the organization all across. And to get to that curiosity, I think there is a certain level of courage that's required, where you test the boundaries and take risks. And those risks, in many cases, get rewarded if you touch on the right one, if you mitigate the downsides of them, and if you allow your team to show you your blind spots around them.
Well, look, I might just jump in there if it's okay, because you mentioned a couple of things there which I think shows great sign of leadership. One, you saying you're a work in progress, right? So you have that awareness that we're all a work in progress. And the other thing is blind spots, that we all have these blind spots. You mentioned as well about the energy, right? Which I think is a very important word within organizations, and how you create that energy. What about the days where you feel, because we all have these days, where some days we feel like we don't have the energy ourselves? What do you do on days like that?
I think it's important to step back from the day-to-day fires and really look at the big picture and reflect on what got you to the point where you are. And I was introduced to a model called the mood elevator. You need to be aware of where you are on that mood elevator, because none of us are on a fixed energetic mode all the time, or lower on the judgmental or resentful mode at all the times. But what's important is to be aware where you are and make your best decisions and your most consequential moves when you are higher up at that mood elevator. And the highest level of the mood elevator I've seen is being grateful. So the quickest way to get yourself up is to really be grateful for something or someone or things that happen in your life that gets you quickly to that sort of positive, energetic mindset.
I love it. You sound like someone that is quite thoughtful and introspective, in the sense that you clearly think about these things. Do you have time to reflect on your leadership philosophy or your leadership style?
I think we need to make the time. It's really a non-negotiable, Trevor, because if we allow the day-to-day firefighting to stay in the way, we quickly get dragged into situations where we're not really focusing on the behaviors and the thinking we need to get to the results. So something I've I wish I knew earlier in my career is because I've been always results driven. I would go for the outcomes. But as I grew in my career, I really learned to, if I want the outcome, I should drive the behavior. And the behavior really starts with how we're thinking and why we're thinking in a certain way. For myself and for the person or the team across the table.
You're clearly, as you said there, you focus on outcomes. You're sitting over a large organization in the region, an organization that's doing very well in the region. You're probably, it's fair to say, you're one of the younger guys in our network. We have, over 300 and around 350 members or so. Would you have always considered yourself a natural leader? Is this, you're sitting in this CEO position over the region, was this an inevitability for you in your mind?
No, I would say, growing up early in my career, there's always self-doubt as to what extent can you deliver a task or lead a team. And I found in my experience that the best way is to really put yourselves out there. After 10 years in the Middle East, I volunteered to go work in Sub-Saharan Africa, and I spent 4 fantastic years in there, and then moved to the US and do another assignment. And then I actually moved to Brazil, Latin America. A Jordanian Middle East guy running Brazil was kind of unusual. But the learning experience was so fantastic that when I came back to the Middle East, I had a different perspective on things. So all these moves and putting myself out there, I think has been the most effective way for me to gain self-confidence and to reach where I am today.
I love it. And I hear this a lot in these successful perspective conversations as a piece of advice, people saying, be the person putting your hand up, saying, I'll go and do it. I'll figure it out. And I think your career, when you look at it, is a good example of that. Now that you're back in the region, you clearly are somebody that's quite methodical and thinks a lot about leadership. I can see that from your answer. Do you feel that the very essence of leadership is changing, right? Historically, obviously, the leader has responsibility on the profitability and sustainability of the organization in order for them to continue to have an impact. But now in recent years, the leadership style or the modern leadership philosophy is asking for more from leaders. Obviously, there's a big focus. I hear this every day when I talk to our members about they're focused on their people, they're focused on their culture, and now increasingly also the focus is on, well, what impact are we having on the broader society? What's your take on that, and how have you seen that kind of evolve?
I mean, it's definitely more demanding nowadays to be a leader. I think some of the fundamentals are the same in terms of a lot of us are running business for growth and for financial results, but there is an overarching theme that is a lot more visible now, that to what extent or to what purpose are we doing what we're doing. And the idea that we continue to grow is still valid and important, but how do we decouple that growth from negative impacts, whether in the social front or in the environmental front? And you can see that into the fact that we are the first generation to actually feel the impact of climate change. And we are likely to be the only or the main generation to do something about it, or to try and mitigate it in a meaningful way. So we are in this area or this time where I think leadership is redefined and reconstructed in a way where it's not just the leader himself, it's the wisdom of a team that needs to come together to solve these mega problems that we're facing.
One last question before we shift into our fun round of our rapid fire. Alaa, what's the best piece of career advice that you've ever received, given that it's not unfair to say that you've achieved a lot in your career?
Yeah, well, when I look back, I was always lucky to have really great people to work with in terms of my mentors and my managers. And one of the best things that I was told is that no matter how much experience or knowledge we have or we accumulate, we always look at things through our unique filters. And there is very well equally competent and reasonable person could look at the same thing and see it differently. So it's always about what filters we apply on matters and how do we see it in the other point of view. to reach a constructive outcome in almost all cases. And every time I get a chance to think about that, it helps me resolve the matter we have in hand.
Yeah, I love that. We started a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, personality assessments for everyone in the organization. And I just thought that was so valuable in being able to see, okay, I can see why this person sees the world in a totally different way. Maybe not even a totally different world, but just comes to problems from a different direction. And it's so helpful. Okay, Alaa, thank you so much for joining me. It was a pleasure to learn a little bit more about your leadership philosophy. I'm sure your colleagues, our network, and our viewers will enjoy it. It was a pleasure to have you on Successful Perspectives, and thanks for being on.
Thanks so much, Trevor. I've enjoyed it. Appreciate it.